Welcome to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast, where we focus on discussing topics to help you burn fat, optimize health, and improve performance in life and sports. Transform the whole you from the inside out with the holistic method. Let's dive in. Here's your host, Debbie Potts.
Hey guys, it's Debbie, and before I bring on our guest today, Dr. Vincent, on gut health for the endurance athlete, just wanted to review some information about gut health, and you can learn more on the website happyguthealth.com, and that is going to be where you'll find more information about our guest, Dr. Pedre, and his background. But just wanted to read some things because I think this is so important, especially as driven, ambitious, high-performing athletes. We tend to do too much of everything. We hear something's good on a podcast. We hear something is powerful for recovery and repair or for improving performance. And then we hear about these different biohacks to do and cold therapy and sauna and blah, blah, blah. We just get more and more on our list to do. And I'm always curious, are these things effective if we're doing it all the time? Less is more is my mantra of my new self. My old self would always be thriving with more is better philosophy. And all these supplements everyone's taking. I know I have a cabinet filled in my kitchen, and the pantry has all sorts of supplements, powders, potions. And then up in our bathroom cabinet, I have all these other supplements. And I've got a container in my closet that has some more for backup. But when do we need certain supplements? How long should you take them? Are they effective? Are you just guessing that you need it? Are you absorbing it? That's why I think it's great to investigate what's actually going on with functional lab test assessment, not just looking at blood chemistry, but looking at the whole picture, because a blood chemistry test gives many, many clues towards looking at a GI map or gut zoomer or Genova Diagnostics 3-day stool test. We need to look at the whole picture because a blood test is going to tell us a lot, but it just is giving us clues. We need to do more digging and collect more clues to put the missing pieces of your health puzzle together so we can figure out how you can improve performance, how you can speed up recovery, how you can improve your digestion, and what foods should you eat, when should you eat, how are you eating, are you eating mindfully? So as Dr. Vince and I talk about today, it all starts with the gut. And his story is how he got into what he calls the happy gut, is starting with his own childhood gut issues, developing irritable bowel syndrome later in life, healing through functional medicine. And he's a practitioner through the Institute of Functional Medicine. And now he helps patients heal their gut with issues and teaches them how to find the path to total wellness that starts with the gut. And just a good story I wanted to share that he has on his website, but butterflies in your stomach. Do you ever feel that before a race? How many people would have, get sick or have to run to the bathroom a lot before a race? They got nervous. And you just have butterflies in your stomach. And I think a lot of people deal with that nervous stomach. So it teaches you the gut-brain connection. When you're nervous, what happens? You have some irritable bowel issues, or you have a headache, you have some other symptoms. But Dr. Vince's story talks about when before he started medical school, he had a nervous stomach. And I think a lot of athletes can relate to this story because I've heard for years so many people having issues in a marathon or before a race, and they just have troubles and they didn't know how to deal with these issues while they're in a race. So his story says, whenever he had a test or piano performance, he felt like he had a swarm of butterflies doing somersaults inside his belly. He would feel so sick to his stomach that he had to eat. I would feel so sick to my stomach that I had to eat hours before any test or performances. There you go. Got that out right. Or he might risk getting sick and vomiting. But it didn't end at his belly. He would catch so many upper respiratory infections that he often turned to sinusitis, or it turned into bronchitis, and the pediatrician was concerned about his immune system. Then they would give him multivitamins, thinking that would strengthen his defenses. But back in the 80s, we didn't understand the importance of gut health and how foods can affect our immune system function. And so he talks about the sad gut, the weakened immune system. So he continues to talk about milk, the sugar-laden wheat cereals and milkshakes that were made up in his diet were giving him more than just a sad gut. They're hurting his stomach. But they were also weakening his immune system. It wasn't until his early 20s that he stopped getting sick all the time because he finally cut out the cereal with milk for breakfast. After those years, he had to believe, like most of us do now, that milk was good for me. And it's when he made the correlation between avoiding milk, he had less colds and less sinus infections. And that was his first aha moment. So he talks about the importance of having that happy gut, sad gut. When he was in medical school, it was hard to believe that his fellow doctors-to-be ate the same foods as he did, but suffered none of the secondary consequences that he experienced. As he started his own journey towards gut happiness, it took him several more years of trials and errors to fully grasp the best way to eat for his body. By making a few additional changes in his diet, including adding more healthy fats, he felt better than he ever had, but he still wasn't in the clear. Full disclosure, he says, what began as a nervous stomach in his childhood turned to IBS in his mid to late 20s. By then, he had discovered meditation and learned to control his nerves through calming breathing exercises, stress management. But stress still did a number on his gut. Sure, he was not getting as many respiratory infections, but he was still eating some of the wrong foods. So then he looked into gluten. So he had trouble figuring out why his gut still was misbehaving. Like many of us, he was eating all the foods that were accepted, those healthy foods, following the food pyramid, meats, fruits, vegetables, salads, whole grains, healthy whole grains like pizza, bagel. How we ever thought that was healthy? Bagels and sandwiches and pasta. So as dozen of his patients he sees weekly, he had no idea that gluten was an enemy for him, which is for me as well. And everyone I test personally on my lab test investigation with clients, wheat zoomer is one we look at. And I haven't seen anybody that's not reactive to wheat. So FYI, avoid gluten. Without any symptoms, you just don't know that it could be related to wheat. So what he talks about today, we talk a little bit about how wheat can affect your body, but you just don't correlate all those symptoms together. So he was chronically tired, mentally fatigued, achy, depressed. He had regularly upset stomach. He was overworking, as you hear most people in medical school working up to 100 hours a week. And he attributed those symptoms long hours of doctor in training. But he didn't connect the dots that it was between what he was eating and his gut health. So poor diet, high stress, lack of sleep, and years of repeated exposure to antibiotics all contributed to what he's experiencing: gut inflammation, dysbiosis, and a leaky gut. So he started experimenting with dietary changes to improve how he felt. He realized that he felt his best when he was eating lean organic meats, lots of fresh, raw or steamed vegetables, healthy fats, and a limited amount of starchy complex carbs at the right time to fuel his workouts. So he found a calm gut and had a happy mind. And doing the no grains, no sugar type of experiment, he learned even more. So this starts back in 2003. He started a whole makeover of his nutrition, got rid of the processed foods, and brought home mostly organic produce, cooked most of his meals at home so he can be in control of the ingredients. And he started intensive yoga training, meditating, and his energy improved, depression lifted, and his friends told him he looked refreshed. So he said within a couple of weeks, his improvement of his energy levels and sense of well-being were just astonishing. So this is what I love to share this story, because I think so many athletes that I talk to, and I'm coaching more and more endurance athletes specifically now, who are struggling with chronic fatigue, unexplained weight gain, with if it could be migraines or inflammation in their joints, and just poor recovery, and they just can't get the strong muscles that they had. It's not your new normal. It's not your body aging. We need to embrace the aging process, but we need to look at what's actually going on under the hood and invest in your health and figure out what you're doing so you're just not doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So we're going to talk to Dr. Vince today and talk about his new book and talk about what is a happy gut and how his happy gut cleanse can help improve digestion, more energy, sense of vitality, reduce your allergies, less migraines, body aches, and smiling, laughing, and feeling like you had a second chance at health. And that's what I believe in too, right? I created the holistic method 10 years ago, and gratitude is on there. Gratitude, play, happiness. That so many of us, myself included, when we're racing, we're training hard, we're trying to fit everything in, we're kind of hyperdrenic. We're just high cortisol. We're on fire all the time. And we are forgetting sometimes to let loose, to relax and have fun. Now, it doesn't mean going and drinking a ton of alcohol and getting sick like happened to me when I was told to let loose. I was sick for a week, and that was the start of my adrenal fatigue. So I'll stop talking, but I just think it's an important topic that we need to discuss more for athletes, and how a happy gut, happy life is also happy gut, improved performance and longevity. So let's talk more, and let me introduce our guest. Hey, it's Debbie, and I'm sitting here outside working, and there's a spin class going on out here in the other room here. So if you hear some noise, that is what's going on. I'm going to talk to Dr. Vincent Pedre today about gut health. And I think this is so essential for athletes to look at. Are you healthy from the inside out? What's actually going on? And I'm working more as a health investigator with my clients to help them figure out the best field training and performance plan based on investigating their external and internal stressors. So we look at the holistic method, looking at nutrition, exercise, sleep, stress, movement, gut health and digestion, hydration, and happiness, gratitude, play, laughter. So we're a little bit intense sometimes. We need to play and get that oxytocin level up. Okay. So when I'm working with people to help figure out why is your performance not as up, why is your strength not as strong and you're not as powerful as you used to be, it's not because of age in class. It's not because of age. We want to look at other things going on. Do you have H. pylori? Do you have bacteria overgrowth, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth? Do you have a parasite? Do you have candida, yeast overgrowth? Do you have malabsorption? Do you have endotoxicity? There's so much to look at, and you don't know what you don't know. So I'm interested to hear what Dr. Vincent talks about in his program, Happy Gut Life. As his founder, he's worked as a nutraceutical consultant and spokesperson for Nature MD, and he's a functional medicine certified practitioner. So let's bring him on and learn more how we can have a happy gut. Is that happy gut, happy life? So let's learn more how you can be a fit and healthy athlete from the inside out. Here we go. Let's bring him on.
Ready to go.
Hey guys, I have Dr. Vincent on the show from Miami, and I'm across the country over here in San Diego, and I look like it's winter. You look like you're happy and vibrant and nice, sunny Florida.
It's sunny here in Florida. I'm quite lucky to be here for the winter this year.
So only warm place in the country. So I am loving to talk about our subject today on gut health. And as I just talked to you a little bit before we pushed record, athletes, my goal is to get them fit and healthy from the inside out. And endurance athletes think they're invincible. We think, oh, I can do an Ironman, a marathon, a run, 2 hours. I'm golden. I'm fit. I'm healthy. But so many athletes, as I'm trying to share, aren't always so fit and healthy as they think on the inside. So talk about what you do. What's your why mission out there with gut health?
My big mission, especially with my second book, the GutSMART Protocol, is to wake people up to how important the gut is as the foundation for both physical and mental well-being. Yeah. And I think that another big realization that I hope people will gain from my book, and also just from listening to this podcast, is that you don't have to have gut issues to have gut problems or gut-related health problems. So a lot of people think, well, I don't have any complaints with my gut, so I'm fine. Well, it's very possible that you might actually be hiding celiac disease, or you might have wheat intolerance, or you might have other food sensitivities or leaky gut, but you don't know because your gut, you're one of those lucky people, quote unquote, where your gut isn't really giving you a lot of information and a lot of feedback, but maybe it takes you long to recover from workouts. Maybe you get a big achy. Maybe you're holding on to some
Yeah.
joint pains that don't seem to resolve. You've got some mental fog. You're not as sharp as you used to be. And you're thinking, well, it's just, I work hard, long hours. I'm not getting enough sleep, whatever it is. You're always chalking it up to other things and not realizing that it's your gut. It's just silently in the background causing problems. And for a lot of people, it doesn't have to come with diarrhea, constipation, IBS-like symptoms. Yes, it does for a lot of people, and a lot of people I've worked with over the years um, come in because of gut health issues. But I've also had people come in with autoimmunity, with severe fatigue, with mental fog, and they have no idea that they have a underlying gut issue or problems with food, or that they're basically poisoning their bodies by eating foods that they think, quote unquote, are healthy because they've been told that eating grains is healthy because you're getting fiber from grains, for example. So I'm all about helping people realize that your matrix, your body matrix is unique, and you've got to discover what is going on inside this body matrix. And that's why I created a quiz, the GutSMART quiz that goes with my book, to help people stratify and see, well, am I severe? Am I moderate? Am I mild? And if you're severe or moderate, you pretty much have leaky gut. We can
Mm-hmm.
prove this just by questionnaire. There's not great testing for leaky gut. There's certain tests that you can do. And before we went on the call, you mentioned the wheat zoomer, and that's certainly one test that can pick up permeability issues. But um, people need to realize that a lot could be going on in their bodies that are gut related, even without gut symptoms. So when your listeners, when they check out my book and they're going to look at the quiz and they're going to say, wait, not all of these questions are about my gut. There's other questions here. Well, they're meant to tease out all of the interconnections between the gut and the brain and the skin and the immune system and the airway and your metabolism and your energy levels. All of that is tied back to your gut health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's so important to let people know, just a simple quiz, that it has, like you said, it doesn't mean you have constipation or diarrhea or bloating or gas. It's so much other things going on, or extremities that correlate to dysfunction in our gut. And really, in nutritional therapy, we talk about starting north to south, how you eat, what you eat, when you eat, why you eat, where you eat, starting with the proper food, but how you digest your food. But so many people have broken digestive function. Plus, I think a lot of people are eating super fast in the middle of their workday, and they're eating in their car. They're in that sympathetic fight or flight
And
all
and
the
I
time.
I know you mentioned, you work with endurance athletes, and there's a number of issues that can arise in the gut of an endurance athlete. And one, the stress you're putting your body under. So you're raising your cortisol
Mm-hmm.
levels, and all of that
Yeah.
stress is like an attack on your gut. Extreme training can actually increase gut permeability. And the other thing that I found, a lot of these athletes, they're trying to get in a lot of protein, right? So they're eating, at least maybe 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And sometimes that protein isn't digesting well
No.
because their bodies are under stress. Their vagus nerve is malfunctioning, so vagal tone drops, and the
So
vagus is,
HRV, that's related to
yeah,
HRV though, right?
that's that's related to HRV. So HRV is basically the balance between parasympathetic and sympathetic, and it's kind of another measure of how is your vagal tone going. But for people to understand, vagus is one of the biggest nerves in the body. It comes from the brainstem, divides into two, and then innervates all of the different organs inside the body, and especially the gut. And it's like a master control switch. So you want that vagus to have a certain baseline tone. I kind of make the analogy to the olden day phones. If anybody who's listening is old enough to remember when age before cell phones,
Yes.
you can see my whites here, so I date back to that age. And when you picked up a phone, there was a dial tone. And if there was no tone, the phone was dead. Well, that
Mhm.
dial tone is the communication. So you have to think of it. So the vagus and the brain and the gut are communicating via the vagus in both directions. And you need a certain level of tone. When that tone drops, your stomach acid production drops, your enzyme production drops, your gut motility slows down. So, you're pounding that protein, and an hour later, 2 hours later, you're still sitting with an upset stomach. That protein hasn't digested well. Maybe you start burping really quickly after you eat. That's a sign that you don't have enough stomach acid. Or you just get really bloated, gassy, and you're just kind of like, like it's hard to get all that protein down. Well, part of it is your digestive system is not, um, it's not optimal.
Yeah, I think that's so common. So go back to chronic stress because that's what I talk about all the time. That I wrote a book called Life is Not a Race, It is a Journey, that chronic stress impacts everything,
That's
including
a great title. I love that
digestion.
title.
Yeah, so I went from high performing, high charging athlete myself and then crashed, gained 30 pounds, couldn't do anything. I went from top in my age group triathlons to not being able to do anything but have a nap in the afternoon. So I
Wow.
am trying to, kind of why I went to be more of a practitioner to help athletes because I think, as you said earlier, chronic stress from training. So talk a little bit more about that because is this like a mother talking to their kids all the time, hearing that they need to hear from other people. So how does chronic
Yeah.
stress, how does exercise, endurance exercise over 45 minutes impact
Yeah.
our health?
I mean, it's going to increase inflammation in the body. So you're going to have, so we know that a certain level of stress is good, obviously, or exercise, and it's like a hormetic stressor for the body. Hormetic
Yeah.
stressors are stressors that challenge the body, but they actually improve the way that the body functions. For example, like right now, what's really popular is doing cold plunges. You're seeing everybody
Mhm.
do cold plunges, and there's incredible benefits to that, the boosting dopamine, lowering inflammation, giving you kind of an adrenaline bump and then a drop. Those things are great, and you want a hormetic stressor, but when you're training for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, you're putting your body through more stress than it can actually handle in that moment. So you're kind of tipping the scale. And some of that stress can cause increases in gut permeability. And once you've got little blips, increases in gut permeability, then you're basically opening up the floodgates for things like bacteria, bacterial DNA, for something called endotoxin, LPS,
Mhm.
lipopolysaccharide, which is an extremely inflammatory molecule to get through. And it starts to inflame your body. And like happened to you, like at some point, you reach a threshold after which your body crashes, and
Mhm.
probably, there's a buffer where you can just keep pushing yourself, pushing yourself, pushing yourself, pushing yourself. And eventually your body's going to say, I'm done.
Yeah.
I can't do this anymore. And you crash the entire system. Well, that lipopolysaccharide endotoxin, which is incredibly inflammatory, activates your immune system, causes release of all sorts of inflammatory signals, interleukins, crosses the blood-brain barrier, gets into the hypothalamus where it activates inflammatory pathways, and it also gets into the liver where it activates inflammatory pathways and into your muscle and activates inflammatory pathways. So maybe you start noticing you don't recover as well. And they always say that sleep is just as important as the training. right? Because if you don't get enough sleep, you're also increasing inflammation signals in the body. And then match that to increase in gut permeability, becoming sensitive to certain foods that you're eating. So maybe you used to be okay with wheat, gluten, and now that's causing inflammation, that's causing a reaction. And little by little, you have this smoldering fire that's going on inside your body that you might not realize. When the fire is really small, you might not smell the smoke yet. Eventually, the smoke is going to get high enough that you're going to start smelling it. But sometimes for a lot of people, that's too late. That's when their body, they've reached that threshold, they cross the threshold. But that last bit where they cross the threshold is what just gets their whole system to crash.
Mm. Yeah, and every test I've done on people, their LPS is way elevated. So I think that's something why I always think people should do a GI test and a wheat zoomer type of test to identify what's going on under the hood. Because as I would say, you don't know what you don't know, or you don't correlate all this data together. Go, okay, that's why my performance, my watts are lower on my bike. I'm not able to recover from a workout. It takes me a week after one workout. So you're saying a lot of that is
Yeah.
the stress on our body and the increase of
And
LPS.
and you're not possibly you're not breaking down protein. It's going
Yeah.
back to what I was saying earlier. When you're under high stress, anybody who's listening, like if you've ever been under high stress and you eat and you feel like you have a knot in your stomach, like the
Yeah.
food just doesn't digest well, that's a drop in vagal tone. You're not producing enough stomach acid to meet the demand of the protein that you're eating. You're not producing enough digestive enzymes. So now you're not going to break down that protein and get all those necessary amino acids that are needed as the building blocks for enzymes, for neurotransmitters, for all the things that help for tissue repair in the body. So maybe you find that you were having muscle gains, and now your muscle gains have kind of paused, and you're kind of having trouble, getting past that hump at the gym. And you're thinking, well, I'm pounding the protein, I'm eating more protein, like what's going on? Well, then you've got to, like you said, you've got to look under the hood and you got to see what's happening with the digestive system.
Yeah, you got to investigate because I think I see that all the time, people's labs that they have high H. pylori, really highly, above range, out of range, elevated H. pylori. And people don't know about that, how that impacts their digestion of protein as well, and how to put that all together. You don't realize, you think you're trying hard with your training, as you said, strength training. I'm trying to lift heavier weights. I'm trying to do speed work, and I hear it all the time from people, like, why? So it is, investigate,
Try
figure out
try
what's actually going on.
Yeah, you've got to try smarter, not just harder.
Yes, it's so true. So what have you found with a lot of athletes, endurance athletes? What do you find trending in their microbiomes, in their gut health dysfunction for people that are,
Well,
I mean, I think endurance athletes say chronic stress, right? Is that kind of the same category? Because endurance
yeah.
athletes are training a lot and they've got a busy life, they have work, they're burning, candle both ends, waking up at 4 a.m. so they can fit training in before the kids get up, and try and do it in between, be home for their family. It gets complicated.
Yeah, so you can see a variety of things because interestingly, like the University of College Cork in Ireland has looked at uh, endurance athletes and their gut microbiome and found that there are certain positive effects that it seems like being active helps improve the presence of certain microbes that are more anti-inflammatory, so like Verruca microbia. But like you've said, a lot of people out there are walking around, so even if they have a, perhaps a better balanced gut microbiome than someone who's a couch potato who's eating a lot of potato chips and has a great deal of insulin resistance, the athlete is buffering against some of that by keeping lean muscle mass, things like that. But they are very likely to have some abnormal measures of digestion and signs of leaky gut syndrome, like anti-lipopolysaccharide antibodies or anti-zonulin antibodies,
Mm-hmm.
because they're putting their bodies under stress. They might even have low pancreatic function from having leaky gut, since they're always interconnected. So they might have issues with some vitamin absorption, vitamin production. The other thing I think that is really important to consider is, well, where are the macros for a person like that? Because protein might be overemphasized, and then vegetables get de-emphasized. So they might not be meeting what we know are the optimal daily intake for vegetables and fiber, for example. And what we're learning now actually is really what I call the holy grail of gut health is one word. It's diversity. So microbial diversity is the holy grail of gut health. It's really what you want because, just going back to my mission to helping people build the foundation of gut health for better physical and mental wellness. When it comes to what is it that's going to have the most positive effect on the body, the studies are pointing towards diversity in your gut microbiome. And this is actually really recent research. Some of it didn't make it into my book because my book was already completed
Yeah,
when this
that always
study came
happens.
out. But they actually did a study where they looked at they looked at stress scores in a group of people. It was about 45 people divided into two, and they looked at stress scores before and after a 4-week dietary intervention. And the intervention was one control group that just got general dietary advice, but no specific amounts of what to eat. And then the other group got very specific guidance on 5 to 8 servings of fiber per day and 2 to 3 servings of fermented foods. Now, there was another study that was done, and most people on average will eat less than half a cup of fermented food per day, maybe less than that. Maybe they're getting some yogurt, whatever. So in this study, they did fiber rich and a good amount of ferments, 2 to 3 servings, like 2 to 3 cups per day. And the placebo group had no effect on stress. So they were pretty much the same before and after. The group that was eating lots of fiber and fermented foods had a significant drop in their stress scores. And this ties back to the mind-gut connection, but also what's happening in the gut, because if we tie this to another study that was done in Stanford University looking at a fiber-rich versus a high fermented foods diet, what they found was that a high fermented foods diet increases microbial diversity. So again, the holy grail of your gut health. And 2, it lowered 19 inflammatory markers.
Wow.
Now, if I'm an endurance athlete listening to this, I'm thinking, okay, how can I start incorporating some yogurt, some kombucha, maybe some vegetable brine, all this stuff, and maybe you want to run out, and then you want to start filling yourself with these drinks. The problem is that if you take my GutSMART quiz and you test severe, if you're in the severe category, you actually can't have fermented foods yet.
Yeah.
Because your gut health is not up to par to allow you to have fermented foods. So, there's a lot of individuality. We can take these macro recommendations and say, yes, in general, the goal is to eat more fiber, to eat more fermented foods, to incorporate that into the diet. But you might not be ready. We've got to then filter that down and personalize it. But these are kind of like the big suggestions here is really thinking about getting in the yogurt, the vegetable brine drinks, which is what the 2 main sources that people were using to get up to, in that study that I mentioned on the high fermented foods, 6 servings per day during the test period, which is a 6-week period. That's 6 cups. It's a lot.
Wow. That is a lot.
And it did improve microbial diversity, which again, and more importantly, it lowered 19 inflammatory markers. And if you're training hard, you want to do everything you can to keep your body inflammation down, and that's What can you do through what you put into your interface, both through your mouth and then through
Hmm.
your brain? So the thoughts you have, the way you hold stress, the
Yeah,
way you process stress, all of that is
huge.
super important.
So, what markers do you look at? What are you testing, lab testing, blood chemistry panel, GI test? What do you like to look at to see what's going on? Where's the inflammation?
Yeah, there's a lot of different tests that you can do. Classically, you can look at things like the C-reactive protein. We'll look at even sometimes I'll do an ESR, erythrocyte sedimentation rate. It tells you almost like how sticky your red blood cells are, which is another sign of inflammation in the body. I'll look at a lot of different markers for autoimmunity. Usually a lot, specifically thyroid autoimmunity, antithyroid peroxidase, antithyroglobulin. And then I like to get granular and look at the gut test, and a lot of times I do use Vibrant America Labs, so I like using their gut zoomer to look at what's happening in the stool, get an idea of functional measures. There's a lot of functional measures in the stool that can be revealing as to is there inflammation in the stool, like calprotectin, eosinophilic protein X. Interestingly, I just did that with a patient, no gut issues whatsoever, but we had done a CBC, so a complete blood count, also an essential part of workup plus liver kidney function. And he had high eosinophils, but no clear allergy symptoms. And for anybody who's listening, eosinophils are a type of white blood cell that reacts either to allergies or to parasites. But his number was much higher. I've seen the eosinophil counts in people who are reacting to environmental allergies, might be in 7, 8%. His was at 14%. So I thought, ooh, this is kind of strange. No gut symptoms. So zero gut symptoms. Ran a gut zoomer on him. He's got a positive fecal eosinophilic protein X, which again, it's just another marker that relates to the eosinophils and gives you more information as to, okay, this is not just in the blood system, but this is affecting the gut. And he was positive for Entamoeba histolytica.
Mm.
So he had a parasite. And
Yeah.
that's why his fecal eosinophilic protein X was high. His calprotectin, I think, was a little bit bumped. His C-reactive protein was a little bit high. You can also, you mentioned the LPS, the anti-LPS, the anti-vinculin antibodies. You can test for people with IBS with diarrhea. You can look at anti-cytolethal distending toxin, anti-CDT antibodies. So for anybody out there who maybe is an endurance athlete and has IBS, well, we're now learning that there's a certain segment of IBS, the IBS-D, that may be triggered by a traveler's diarrhea or getting some sort of infection that then actually starts with your body reacting to the toxin, the anti-cytolethal distending toxin, and eventually turns into your body attacking its own cytoskeletal structures. One of them, imagine these are scaffold proteins. One of them is called vinculin. There's actin. There's zonulin, the one that signals and controls gut permeability. And you see a rise in antivinculin in these patients with IBS with diarrhea. And we used to think that IBS is this functional disorder just of the bowel that has nothing to do with autoimmunity, but there could actually be an autoimmune component to people with IBS that then causes a destruction of the gut barrier, leading to more leaky gut and more food sensitivities and things like that. So looking at those things as well, I like to look at insulin levels, fasting blood glucose levels,
Hmm.
as other markers of how a person is doing with their inflammation and their internal signaling. And
Yeah.
yeah, I'm thinking what else. Depends, I order different tests depending on what my suspicions are.
Yeah. Can you going back to what you just said, though, I think is a big red flag for a lot of athletes is the runner's diarrhea, or they have the runner trot and have that. I think so many symptoms that people have, they think they're normal, and they don't realize that it doesn't have to be like that. It's not just how you're meant to be, and they don't have any clue that, oh, not everyone experiences this, or that, oh, I could just fix a few things and I don't have to have that. But that how runners in, say like Ironman too, triathlons, people have loose stools. They don't realize that they can fix that. So have you come across any athletes having some issues with loose bowels or diarrhea when they're running, or, have to finish a race or work out and they have to run to the bathroom?
I remember watching the New York City Marathon and watching one of the leaders for the women, and she was running and having diarrhea at the same time.
Not
And she was
embarrassing at
just
all.
zooming along and just like, okay, well, you're running to win and hopefully get a big payout. But yeah, I mean, for some people, for my patients who are more sedentary, I might actually be telling them, look, you need to get out there, you need to run, you need to do some cardio exercise. That's going to stimulate the bowel and it's going to get you moving. So it's good. But if it's going to the other extreme where you're doing exercise and you get the runs, and you've got to look for underlying functional issues with the bowel, from leaky gut, from dysbiosis or imbalances of good, bad bugs. Maybe you've got a parasite, maybe you've got a worm, maybe you've got some other things going on in there that are correctable. And because you live with these things all the time, and you probably lived with them for a while, that happened with me, and why I became so passionate with this is because I ended up with IBS after like 20 plus rounds of antibiotics as a teenager, and I had a really sensitive digestive system. And at some point, right before I went to medical school, I just thought, well, this is just the way my body is. I'm going to just have to learn to live with this for the rest of my life. And, I'll just have to deal with the fact that maybe if I'm out at a restaurant, I might have to run to the bathroom, and I don't know what is it that I ate that caused that problem. And the truth is that when I discovered functional medicine, I realized, wait a second, this doesn't have to be my normal. You mean like that my gut is messed up, but that I can actually rebalance it. I can restore my microbiome. I can seal the gut lining and improve leaky gut, and have normal bowel movements again, and not feel like I have to run to the bathroom on a moment's notice. Yeah, I mean, I think that's for the people out there that have the gut-centric symptoms that they've learned to ignore because they just think that they're part of their normal. So they're just like, yeah, whenever I eat pizza, I have to go to the bathroom and get diarrhea.
That's the way it is.
Or if I have some ice cream, yeah, it's going to make me go to the bathroom. It's going to make me really gassy. But I like having the ice cream, so I'm going to keep having the ice cream. And yet, when you do testing, it does help people understand. Or even just if you took my GutSMART quiz and you score a severe, you realize, wow, there's a lot going on here that I didn't even, because a lot of times we become numb to what's happening in our body until somebody asks us, like, oh, well, do you tend to get headaches? Do you get migraines? Do you tend to feel achy in the mornings? You're like, well, I didn't think about it, but yeah, I do. And it's because it's just so easy to ignore yourself when you're just too busy. There's a lot of reasons why people tend to ignore their body cues. But it's so important to realize that bring into awareness what you think is normal, but is really not normal. And then you can then actually choose to do something about it.
So do you find that correlates with vagal tone and that gut-brain connection, testing heart rate variability and looking at that, and then how to improve your HRV balance?
Definitely something that is extremely important when doing any sort of gut healing or gut restoration. Realize that it's not all just about the diet, that it's also about the mindset. And it's about how your body holds on to stress and how you are living your life. Because if you are mostly in a sympathetic, unsafe fight or flight mode, your body cannot heal.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, what healing the body is like, like when you're beautifying it. So actually was doing an interview earlier today and heard this great analogy from Sachin Patel that if your house is burning down, you're not going to paint one of the walls. So
Yeah.
when your body's inflamed, your body's going to do everything to put out that inflammation. That's where
Mm-hmm.
all the resources are going to be focused on that. But we want to get to the point where we can repair. So we want no flames to be going on. The atmosphere is calm, and you can decide, well, you know what? I feel like painting that wall green. I'm going to paint it moss green and do internal improvements. Your body cannot heal unless it feels safe. And when your body is safe, it's in a parasympathetic, relaxed state that allows it to assimilate the nutrients and to translate that into HRV, into that type of, heart coherence, like meditation with gratitude focused on expanding the heart channel. It gets you into greater HRV, which is just showing that you've got a better balance between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. Because most people are too sympathetic, not parasympathetic enough. You don't want to be the opposite. You don't want to be too parasympathetic and very little sympathetic. You need that kind of like that give and pull, that tug and pull. But yeah, you've got to by improving vagal tone, improving HRV, you're putting your body into a state that allows your gut to heal, and then it has this domino effect on the rest of your health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's why I just thought of S Fuels as a supplement program for endurance athletes, and they have glutamine in their ingredients and MCT oil. And so it's just so important, I think, for when athletes are training and figuring out how to fuel for their events and how to recover and repair. It's nutrition, adding those good superfoods to help the gut health and how we're depleting it. But everyone's using Whoop and Aura and tracking their heart rate variability. And I watch this when I'm training my clients full time, my VIP program, that I'm watching their metrics. And one thing I wish they would do a little more of is on the Aura or Whoop is HRV, but I want to know my LF and HF score, the high frequency and low frequency score, to know where is my sympathetic relationship to the parasympathetic and see that balance. And I've done podcasts on that, but I think it's so important to look at that whole athlete, how we need to look at digestion, gut health, and what you're eating when, and the stress and the sleep, but also the gratitude and happiness. I call it the holistic method coaching program, but how important that laughter and play is for athletes.
It's funny you say that because look what I'm wearing.
Yeah, I noticed that. I know my Aura, I don't like the Whoop wristband because I don't like too much on my wrist because I got to wear jewelry. But I think it
it's
is
funny, and I
important to
don't like
track.
things on my finger,
Yeah,
so that's why I don't
that's
have an
who
Aura
uses the
ring.
Whoop. The Whoop people don't like things on the fingers, and the Aura people don't like wearing wrist devices
It's
while they
funny.
sleep. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, why we need both. But anyways, I think it's so important to track all this and test, not guess, is always what we say. But just going back to something you said earlier about, what to eat. And I think, looking at what you would do for the GutSMART protocol, a 14-day personalized gut healing plan based on their quiz, but
Yeah.
also like we do nutritional therapy assessment with my clients, looking at what we talk about, the vegetables, the FODMAPs, lectin, oxalates, phytates. I think a lot of people go to carnivore for gut reset, and because you look at, okay, what can I eat? Because there's all these anti-nutrients and, plant toxins and all of this that causes all this stuff. But I think it gets confusing. Why I'm such a believer in what we all do is that personalized coaching program, because it is so individual. It's not an N equals one. I mean, it is an N equals one program. But talk a little bit about nutrition for gut and what is a smart gut protocol and how do you figure out a program
Yeah.
for them?
Yeah. So the GutSMART protocol is divided into 3 categories based on the GutSMART score quiz: mild, moderate, or severe. And then based on those categories, there's different recommendations to make foods more gut friendly, for example. And there's certain foods that are not allowed. Like I said, the ferments are not allowed in the severe category. And even in the moderate category, when they are added in, they're added in very little at a time. So we're talking about a quarter teaspoon, then maybe half teaspoon, like just testing the waters. And then we've got a whole bunch of I basically created a very extensive list of all foods like vegetables, grains, all that, what's in, what's out. Gluten is out in general, just because I think that gluten is a big insult to the gut, and it's just become too problematic for too many people to heal,
Yeah.
and it increases gut permeability. And there are other things that are macro suggestions that it doesn't matter what category you're in, like alcohol. Alcohol is a gut disruptor. It's going to affect the makeup of your gut microbiome, and it's going to also increase the release of inflammatory cytokines, and it's going to cause gut permeability issues. So, if you're healing your gut, you're healing your body, it's better not to drink. It's just,
Yeah.
and coffee is
And if you
also,
track, I'll throw in there real quick. If you look
yeah,
at your sleep score, when you drink alcohol, like I don't drink much, but I'll have one drink every couple of weeks, maybe two is my maximum. I have this rule. And I just do a vodka soda is all I really like. But
yeah, which is, by
my
the way,
sleep
allowed
score
in the
sucks.
mild category. So
Oh,
mild
okay,
mild does
good.
allow a little bit, because I also want to be realistic that there are
Yeah.
people out there who want to be able to have something to drink.
But it is a motivator when you see and you feel how crappy your sleep is after one cocktail. It's crazy, at least for
It
me
is,
and
it
most
is,
people I talk to.
and actually it was a big motivation for me to test that out. Because I'm partly dogmatic and partly not dogmatic about the way I run my own diet, because I think being too orthorexic is not good.
Yeah.
So allowing some leeway with some lack of exceptions. Like I won't have gluten because I've now tested it over the last 15 plus years, and I know that it's just not worth it for me. So
Yeah.
why am I gonna, unless it was like something really special, like some homemade sourdough or something, unusual, but I really don't find a need to risk it. And that's after years of testing. And there's going to be hiccups, for people. But where was I going with this?
I know. So got you on a tangent, but I was just saying that about alcohol. That's what we're talking about. Alcohol
Yeah, yeah. So
is
I was
just
gonna
really
say
limited.
I decided as an experiment to, and I'm not a big drinker, but just to not drink starting January 1st.
Dry
And
January, everyone does it. It's a trend.
yeah, yeah, and you know what? I did I had ne I'm never like one to think like, oh, let me do something because it's a trend. I did it more to really pay attention to how does this affect my body?
Hmm.
And like you said, like you register it in the deep sleep and the restorative sleep and your sleep score. But the improvements are just, visible without any sort of metric. I wake up before the sun rises, I meditate, or I go to the gym as the sun is rising.
Hmm.
And I used to not be able to do that. And I
Yeah.
noticed that even one drink made it difficult for me to wake up with my alarm the next morning. And it doesn't sound logical that it would, but we know what a gut disruptor it is and how it can disrupt sleep, and it has ripple effects that I think are much greater than we realize.
Hmm. Yeah. I going back to the 14-day program. So you're saying it takes 14 days to heal a gut?
No, I'm saying that in 14 days, you can make a big dent in
Yeah.
things. But we know as people who are focused on gut healing that it can take multiple cycles. So what I wanted to give people was a program that was not overwhelming, that they think, well, I can commit to this. I can do 14 days. And as you take your GutSMART quiz, you figure out what category you're in. You do the 14 days. And by the way, the 14 days is not just eating, it's meditation, breath work. It's doing a lot of mindset stuff. And then at
Hmm.
the end of the 14 days, you take the quiz again, find out where your score
Mm-hmm.
is, and you both get a category score, but actually a number score from as low as, I don't think it'll be 0, but let's say
Yeah.
1 to 450. And you can actually compare your number score to each other, even if you stay within a certain category. The moderate is the biggest category. And then repeat the protocol based on where you're at. So you might actually piggyback and do the protocol several times while you're working on all these issues and working to resolve things. And like I say in my book, if you do the protocol and you've done several cycles and you still feel like there are some things that haven't been fully worked out, then that's the time to work with a practitioner, to look for a functional medicine provider, to look for places where deeper healing can be had. But what I really wanted to do is get to all those people out there who maybe are on the cusp, they've heard of this, they're not sure if it's right for them. And I think what you can show people is in 14 days you can make a big dent in their health. And a dent that's big enough to make them realize, wow, if I do this, I can get here in 14 days. What happens if I do this for another 14 days? What
Yeah.
happens if I do this for another 14 days after that? Wait, what happens if I make this my lifestyle?
Wow. Imagine that. It is that I think is like I was saying earlier is what we but how. And I think so much of it is, stopping, pausing and breathing and shifting to that parasympathetic nervous system before we start chowing down. And I watch people eat a lot, like especially I'm at my club right now, and you see people in the cafe eat and they're and it's like
Yeah.
chill
They're
out,
not
you're
they're not chewing, so they're actually robbing themselves of the very first part of the digestion, which is
yeah.
like an assembly line. And each part of the assembly line depends on what happened before it. And guess what? You don't have teeth in your stomachs. You're not a bird. So if you don't chew up here, then the food isn't going to be chewed in your stomach. And sometimes you might actually see like food that you ate that's not been digested out in your poop. So you
Uh-huh.
should be checking your poop as
Yeah, I
well
just
to
told some of that yesterday. I said, poop, we gotta look at your poop.
you got to look at your poop, see like are there, you know, non-digested parts of vegetables in your poop. All these are signs like you need to slow down, chew your food until it is like the consistency of salsa, basically,
Mhm.
and then swallow it. Then you've already done part of the work that's going to help your stomach digest the food better. So even just going back to, endurance athletes pushing the protein, but how many times are you actually chewing that protein down well enough before you
Mhm.
swallow it and it gets into your stomach? Or
Yeah.
you're inhaling the food because you're busy with other things and you're just not really mindfully eating.
Yeah, mindful over mindless eating, I talk about all the time with my clients. But I think the other thing is you're talking about protein a lot, and I've been talking about protein all the time lately because I listen to, Dr. Gabrielle Lyon and how we need 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight, and Dr. Stacy Sims for the female athlete, and
Yeah.
everyone's all about protein right now. It's like, okay, keto's out, carnivore's in, protein, focus on that. But was doing a podcast. I did a one just last week and just a solo podcast of me chatting about my thoughts about protein for athletes. It's really hard, especially, I don't get hungry very often. Then you eat and protein's so filling and satiating. It's hard to really hit the macro goals. That's one thing. But if we're supposed to have protein pre-workout and then post-workout, that's why I find like, well, taking essential amino acids is already broken down into those aminos is much more efficient for an athlete that you're not able to digest that food in the first place. But, you know, taking like I do Keon essential amino acids, been trying to do that pre-workout and then post-workout, having a grass-fed whey shake, or I know people that can't do whey, there's glycines high in or the beef protein, getting other ways to get that protein in because we can't digest it, and then wait until I'm a little more relaxed and able to focus and eat mindfully, have a steak or a grass-fed burger and have that with some whatever pickles I like or whatever coleslaw or something on the side. But I think it is figuring out how to get that protein in. And we're often in that sympathetic, especially out eating around our workout, that having that protein and timing in those carbs when needed, that you can't digest it all.
Yeah,
So,
that's partly why I designed an enzyme that I have with my brand Happy Gut called Activate
yeah.
Plus to basically help people break down protein and absorb fats better so that they can utilize, they can get the benefits of all the protein that you're eating. Like you said, there are other ways like having branched chain amino acids that makes it easier to absorb, but you don't want to get everything like that. And whey might not be great for someone who has
Mm-hmm.
dairy sensitivity, which is a big part
Yeah.
of the population. Maybe, not as ideal, but a micronized pea protein, if you have issues with beef protein or with whey,
Yeah.
I think there are other ways. And I agree, like you want to get that protein in, but based on what I'm learning about the microbiome, you want to balance it out with the right amount of vegetables and putting in those pickles, sauerkraut, the fermented
Mm-hmm.
foods as
That
well.
cloudy ones, right? Pickles that have the milky stuff inside, like bubbies, not
Yeah.
the ones with sugar they're not fermented if they don't have the milky substance in there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think is so important but that was my last question is on supplementation. Is there things that you like? You said digestive enzymes, because after, say, most of us are over 40 here, some of us are 50, that planes
I'm
going
almost
over,
there.
sorry. This this is a Miramar is near us, so sometimes you get the Top Gun type of planes flying around here. So the digestive enzymes pre-meal, taking a wheat rescue when you're eating out, what do you find that works to help improve that digestion and our microbiome health for supplementation?
Big ones are taking digestive enzyme, especially one that's got some hydrochloric acid in it, as well as broad range proteases. And ox bile, I think, is also important because you also
Yeah.
want to make sure you're getting healthy fats and absorbing those fats so you can get all your fat soluble vitamins as well. So, and that's usually taken right before the meal or in the middle of the meal, usually not after the meal. So you want to try to remember, carry it in your purse, carry it with you. So you always have it when you're eating out. So you're never without it. That's super important. So that's an example of one that I developed, Activate Plus for Happy Gut. Then the
Uh,
other ones that you want to think about is maybe a probiotic, although honestly, the greatest microbial diversity you're gonna see is by eating a combination of fiber and fermented foods. You wanna get it through your foods when possible. There's a lot of other biohacks that you can do or gut hacks like taking postbiotics like butyrate,
mhm.
really anti-inflammatory. It's really helpful in healing leaky gut. I'm also a big fan of depending on the patient of client, people have maybe collagenous colitis or signs of inflammation inside the gut. Using serum-derived bovine immunoglobulins can be really
Mhm.
helpful, or that combined with a spore-based probiotic like Bacillus subtilis or Bacillus coagulans.
Mhm.
That can be really effective in improving the health of the gut and also just improving your stool in general. So those are some of the really important ones. Of course, key for almost everyone is a leaky gut powder or a gut supportive powder. Uh, One example is the Enhance that I've created with Happy Gut, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of different brands out there. You want to make sure it has L-glutamine. You want to mix with DGL, aloe vera, marshmallow root
Mhm.
extract, and slippery
What's
elm
that
bark.
called? What do you call it?
Enhance.
Enhance. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because everyone I test, they do have mucosal barrier damage. And I think everyone has leaky gut at some level. And then whatever else, bacteria, candida, H. pylori, dysbiosis, it's like everyone's got something. And like you said, test and not guess, because you might think, you don't correlate that dysfunction to migraines or skin issues or joint pain, poor
Yeah.
recovery, inability to get power out of your workout. So I think it's like so essential to invest in your health. If you're trying to be this fit and healthy athlete, why don't people spend money on taking care of themselves from the inside out? Always blows me away. It's like, oh,
I'll
10,000 for a bike, easily.
I'll give
Test.
you
Oh, I
a
don't want to
I'll give you a
spend.
strange one. So I was on a trip to Africa, and I was hanging out with a guy who was on my trip from India, and he's like, I've been to all these doctors, and they can't figure out why I've got to take antihistamines all the time. Like my skin is itchy, but particularly my palms are itchy, and the bottoms of my feet are itchy. And I told him, look, without a test, I'm going to guess that you have blastocystis hominis. It's one of the most common parasites out there that in Western medicine, we say it's not responsible for anything. It's just benign, but actually they found in
Mm,
studies that it increases gut permeability. So
mm.
it does cause leaky gut, but it also has a very characteristic presentation in some people where it causes itchy palms and
Ah,
itchy feet. And lo and behold, he went back to India, got tested, had blastocystis, got treated for it, and then he's off his antihistamines.
imagine
And that's
that.
just,
Yeah.
and that's just an example of top-down approach, like let's just treat the symptoms rather than look under the hood, figure out what's going on, and
Yeah.
why is it that
Band-Aid.
these symptoms are presenting on the outside of the body, but they're not being caused, but because they're on the outside of the body, they're actually being their root is in the gut. But it's just an example of, the difference between the Western medicine approach and the functional approach is Western medicine is top down. Let's deal with the symptoms. And you know what? As long as your symptoms are controlled, just take an antihistamine for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
We don't
Drives me
care what's
nuts.
going on. Or bottom up, look for the root cause, find what's causing it, fix it, and then you can stop the downstream inflammation in the entire body.
Yeah. I I mean that's so needed and I wish everyone would realize that. So hopefully this book, the Gut Smart book, and that can help people kind of open their eyes that we should take ownership of our health. Like I say all the time, self-care is self-love and invest in your health because if you go to your regular doctor, they're not going to catch these and they'll just take your symptoms to them and you're going to get a medication and just treat it as a band-aid and think that's a forever plan and not really figure out, oh, I can just fix this and get these balances in my body instead of being just everything connected. So it just makes such a difference. I appreciate that.
Amen.
So athletes need to do something because I think they just think they're healthy because they're doing all that training and they're fit. But I think that's kind of why I'm
Sometimes they're not eating the
specializing in.
healthiest diets, right? Like
Oh, I
if you
know.
looked at what Michael Phelps ate to meet his calorie counts, big
Yeah,
stack of pancakes and,
Subway.
not all of it is healthy.
Yeah, I know. So where can people find your book? I'll put everything in the show notes.
They can go to GutSMART Protocol. The book is called the GutSMART Protocol. And if they go to gutsmartprotocol.com, they can learn how to pre-order the book. They can also get a free chapter if they go to
Hmm.
gutsmartprotocol.com/gift. I know you're going to put that in
Yep,
the show notes.
in the show notes. Yep.
And when they pre-order the book, they can sample it if you're not sure, like download the free chapter, learn what it's about, see if it applies to you. The free chapter gives you an overview of what the entire book is about. And if it sounds like something that rings true to you, then go ahead and pre-order and you can get 5 different bonuses before the book comes out.
Nice. Then it comes out April 4th, 2023 is your book release
Yes.
date. Good. Well, this should come out around there. So we'll get everyone into ordering that book. And I think it's an important part because as I know, my clients, everyone's got something going on and they had no idea that they had that. So, catch it early and figure out that, you can be your best self and you can figure out if you'll train and perform your best as an athlete, but knowing what to do under the hood. It's getting windy out here. Under the hood to figure out how to live your best life now and your future self. Because I'm all about, yeah, what am I doing in my 50s? But how am I going to be showing up to life when I'm 80 something? That's where my mission is now. It's like train your future self now, not later,
I
as I
love
watch
that.
my family. Watch your own family and your own parents and see what happens if you don't do it. So thanks so much for your time, Dr. Vincent, and we look forward to reading your new book. Good luck.
Thanks so much for the opportunity to share this message with your listeners.
Thanks for listening to the Low Carb Athlete Podcast. If you have any questions, feedback, or topic suggestions, let us know on Facebook or at debbiepotts.net. You can help us to continue to grow by leaving a review on iTunes. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.